Welcome back to Connect with Jonathan Mark. Now, this is a different type of episode and one that I'm really excited about. Today, I'm bringing in a retired FBI agent that worked in counterterrorism, national security, drugs, everything. Now, his name is Richard Frankel, and he's worked on cases that are so national and so big that you guys are going to be completely shocked with this interview. Now, he's made over 500 arrests. He's worked on the Gilligo case. He's worked on the Gambino family case. I mean, it's awesome just to hear his perspective of what he went through in the Bureau, how he got to these cases, and what he did to accomplish these cases. Now, for those of you who don't know about the Gilligo Beach case, this one is really special to me. I live on Long Island. I've been working on it. He's worked on it at a certain point too. And it's a case of someone named Rex Heuermann, who is the person of interest. He's convicted. He's in jail, but he's murdered sex workers. And it's been going on for a very long time, like well over 20 years. They're still not even sure if he has more murders that happened after the 2010 and the early 2000s, in the 90s, in the 80s. No one is sure about this. That's why he's coming on. He's going to be talking about his version of it, how he's dissecting that case, and he may be coming back on to do more cases. Some of the cases that I've actually worked on this show. Now stay tuned and listen to him share all his stories. Can you share who you are, what you've done?
No, it's all secret. I can't talk to you. So
it's all classified.
yeah, exactly. Quick podcast. All done. No, so listen. Have no trouble talking about most of the stuff I've done. Still a couple of things probably still pending. Yeah. So I don't talk about those, but generally, I can talk about how I got into it and what I did in the FBI. And again, some of the stuff is not what I did, but I just happened to be around some great people when they were doing their stuff. I was one piece of the cog, or one cog in the machine, and doing these cases.
Every time people ask me, because I get pulled on to do cases for like unsolved cases a lot with law enforcement now, and people always ask me, they're like, "Do you think you're like such an integral part, such a big part?" And I always say this line, I go, I'm such a small piece to a large puzzle, I feel like. And I say that all the time. So it's so cool to hear you say that, even with all your accolades. I mean, I'm kind of geeking right now, though. I think it's kind of cool just to talk to you. And, I would love if you could share how you got into Bureau and, the process with everything like that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, it's that's all good. So, I kind of joke around about when I first wanted to get in the FBI. I was a little kid. I saw, FBI on TV. When you're 5, 6, 7, 8, what are you going to be when you grow up? I'm either going to be a baseball player, a superhero, or an FBI agent. I don't look good in tights. A superhero was out. I suck at baseball, so being a baseball player was out. So really, the only thing left was to be an FBI agent. But over the years, things change. You move on. You do other things. I actually went to Ithaca College and was a phys ed major, thinking that I'd get into sports and coach or do something along that line. Realized, while I love sports and I enjoy teaching, I didn't have what it took to be a teacher.
Right.
Full time for the rest of my life. And so, in the end, I actually went to law school. Got my law degree from what is now Quinnipiac University. Mm-hmm. And while there, I started interning for different DAs and different prosecutors' offices. So when I left law school, I ended up in the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office where I'd interned. And that was great. The people out there were fantastic. Doing the cases was good. Suffolk County was a great place to definitely break into law and into the prosecutor's office. I ended up being out in the Hamptons for a while, doing crimes out there. I actually was a prosecutor on Fire Island on the weekends for a while, and then I, did some other more, I guess, long-term cases. I ended up in the Major Crimes Bureau doing DWIs and auto matters that made it to felonies. and where people were either injured or killed. So we were doing those cases. I then moved over to the drug bureau, narcotics bureau, and did some cases there. But while there, it was 1993, and if you remember, the first attack on the World Trade Center happened in 1993. I watched it from my office on TV out in Suffolk County, and while watching it, I said, I want to join the FBI. So it took me about a year and a half to get in, and but with all the application and all the hoops you have to jump through if you want to be an FBI agent, I finally was able to get into the FBI, and I actually entered into the academy in 1995. It was great. The FBI Academy to me was college with guns and driving. Yeah, it's you do classes. They're teaching you some forensics. They're teaching you federal law. They're teaching you some psychology, teaching investigative matters. But you're also learning how to shoot. I had never shot before joining the bureau, except maybe once. So for me, this was a whole new thing, and I went from shooting or having never shot to where I was shooting hundreds. So they were very good at the instruction. We did defensive tactics, which is basically grappling, and I had been a wrestler, so I actually enjoyed that and learned a lot on how to properly engage with somebody if they were fighting with you, and how to force them to succumb. In other words, be handcuffed by the end of that training. Oh, wow. And then they also teach you how to drive to a degree. They call it tactical emergency driving, but I was able to do that. So again, the FBI Academy was actually very enjoyable, and you stay there the entire time. So I was in a dorm, and again, just it taught a lot, but it also you fell in with people. You were with them, for weeks and 24 hours a day, and you really get into the that FBI mindset when you're there.
That's so awesome. Well, I don't want to even say this, but I think you and I were rivals because I went to Cortland. And we were, so I think we were rivals a little bit, just a little bit.
I think you won the last Cortica jug, but we won the one before that, which was at the Meadowlands.
Yep.
So it's.
I wanted to ask you actually now, since you know this area and stuff, like what are your thoughts about the Gilligo case? Some of the stuff I know, I'm like, I don't even want to say because I don't know if it's public knowledge. So I'm like, I don't want to say anything, but what are your thoughts on this? I mean, so many people have so many theories, which I'm sure you hear too. I'm so curious about yours.
I was actually in the FBI when that happened. When it first came out, and I was in the criminal division. At one point I was a special agent in charge. And so we actually were trying to assist with the Gilgo investigation. But, at times, listen, the FBI did not have the best relationship with Suffolk County at times in the past. Mm-hmm. While we asked to engage with them, sometimes they just, it wasn't that they lied to us, they just wouldn't let us in. They didn't talk to us that much about it. That changed, over time. Now, with Ray Tierney there, it's been very good from what I understand. I'm out, but I've heard it's very good. Ray and I were actually prosecutors together back in the 90s. So I'm very happy he's the DA. I think he's done a wonderful job. I help his committee to reelect. So he's just a great guy, and he's really taken the bull by the horn with this investigation. I do think, from everything I've seen, that they do have the right guy. Of course, he's either going to have to go to trial or plead guilty, but as of right now, I think they most likely have the right guy, Rex. Yeah. And the only thing I'm still thinking about with this whole case, though, is there's no way that Suffolk TA got the 4 cases that he did, and he did no more prior to that, and he did no more after that. Mm-hmm. So it's been my belief, and it's purely a belief on my part, that he either did other ones in Suffolk or elsewhere prior to that time, during that time, or after that time. In other words, just because they've charged 4, and I think they know that they believe he's been involved in 6. But again, that I don't believe that's the end of what he was involved in. And again, it's just from what I read in the papers, right, and what I know, because back in the day when I was with the FBI and this case happened, he was not a target. I understand his name may have popped up in the investigation, but we had nothing to do with him being charged, at least from my time in the FBI. But again, if he is the killer of those four women, I'd be very surprised that we don't find other women that he may have killed also. And again, it could have been in the 90s, or it could have been up until the time when he got arrested. We just don't know. And I think that's what Ray Tierney and the Suffolk DA's office and the task force is looking into. They're looking at all the cold cases that are out in Suffolk, but also, are there any other cases that may connect to the MO of Rex? I think they've been talking to law enforcement upstate, down in the South. I think
Vegas.
Keep going. They're going to keep looking to see if there are any other cases.
Yeah, it's like I said, when Ray pulled, got me kind of involved in it a long time ago. He didn't really share much with me. He tried to keep me so far removed, which I respected so much, because I didn't want to even. I think at that point I was scared, if I'm being honest, because when someone's telling me there's a potential serial killer at Gilligo Beach, that's 15 minutes from where I live. I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to get involved. But, as time's going on, and, it's so funny because people that I know that are relatively my age, or maybe even younger, or just around my age, they have videos of Rex on the LIRR, drinking with, and it's always girls. It's these girls that I know. And he's always sitting in if people don't know, the LIRR is mass transit from Long Island to Manhattan. And he was always sitting in those 4-seaters where it's the 2 and 2. And he's always with girls, and he's always drinking. And there's videos of this now that they posted on social media. And now people are okay, this is starting to get weird. People are putting pieces together and whatever. But Mike, another question I wanted to ask you is, do you think social media is a positive approach to these cases, or sometimes negative? Because, there's people on TikTok, Instagram, whatever social media platform there is, and they put their theories out there. And sometimes I think, if it gets enough views or whatever, even if it's completely not true, people start to believe something because it has 500,000 views or 1 million views, versus the person who's reporting the truth that has 1,000 views on it. So I just so curious from your standpoint of if you think social media is a crutch, or if it's, just helpful in any way.
Well, in general, I think it's been a hindrance a lot because, the conspiracy theories out there just abound on everything. I mean, from the moon landing to the Rex case to this, to that. I mean, it gives, I guess the good thing, it gives a lot of people voices, but it doesn't provide any checks and balances on those voices. And so you'll get a lot of just pure conspiracy theories that are just completely full of bunk. That being said, there have been times when social media is a positive. The CEO being shot in Manhattan when he was assassinated, you had law enforcement put out fairly quickly, photos of him and his, how he got away and all that stuff. And that helped them find the shooter out in Pennsylvania. So there are good points to social media. And also it allows people to see things more than they did in the past. You may not have as many people knowing about the Rex case, and therefore there may have been somebody who doesn't read, the local papers, and so maybe not have seen a picture of one of the victims, and therefore that victim may stay unidentified. But because it's on social media, you are getting more people looking at it, and there's a possibility that you'll be able to identify more and more victims. Like you said, you see Rex on a train, and somebody posts that, and who knows, maybe one of those people on the train near him was a future victim. There are positives to it. It's just, how do we balance the extreme with stuff that is actually going to help, or at least potentially help?
Yeah, that was always my thing. Going on social media and obviously just scrolling. I'm definitely a victim of just scrolling. But I feel sometimes when I look at these videos, when they're talking about like an example, like the moon landing or the Earth being flat, or then it's an unsolved case. Some people are like I don't know how to explain it. It's like sometimes it's so crazy and they're so confident in their crazy answer that I sit back and I'm like, how are they so confident? And am I wrong right now? Even though like I'm thinking from like a logical standpoint, I'm like, am I even wrong? Because they're so confident in what they say. And then you have all these people kind of at least from my perspective when I look, kind of agreeing with them because they're like, oh my God, you're right, you're right. And then it's kind of like a snowball effect where then the more people comment, the more exposure, the more views. And then that's kind of what I've been seeing on social media. You have over 500 arrests. I was wondering if you could share some of the big cases that you were a part of.
Yeah, I don't know about 500. I don't remember 500 myself, but
It's on there.
oh, okay. Hey,
Yeah,
listen,
yeah.
that's the good thing about being with these squads. I was part of these big cases. I was part of these cases with and fantastic FBI agents, cops, members of ICE, and other agencies. The things that these guys did was just amazing, and for a large part of it, I was one of the people involved, or I was a supervisor or a boss, and so. The one thing I did learn in the FBI is how to take credit for other people's work, and so I became very good at that. At least where I could claim credit with them. Yeah. Well, listen, one of the cases, we did, back in the day, I was on organized crime, and we were on the Gambino squad.
Oh,
We went
wow.
after, everyone associated with that. So there were some great cases that were arrests were made by people on the squad. We did long-term wiretaps. Actually, part of my case where I did a long-term wiretap, they were actually able to use a piece of that case 10 years later when they brought a case of murder,
Oh, wow.
racketeering and murder against I believe it was two mobsters in the family, and they used a piece of my case in that. So yes, I was involved in that case, but these other agents were the ones that did some fantastic work. But after 9/11, I started doing national security and terrorism cases, along with majority of the FBI and law enforcement in New York. I actually became the supervisor of what we called the Threat Squad. And this squad went out. It was almost, we were the criminal squad or the firefighters of terrorism. We went out and put out all the fires until we could find the one that actually was a real case.
Oh, wow.
Then we would take that case and we would hand it off to a case squad. But we would go out 24 hours a day. We had over 60 people on the squad, and we would go out for all these threats that were called into New York. I think over a 2-year period, we had over 10,000 calls into the FBI about terrorism. The FBI handled about 2,000 of those. My squad handled about 2,000 of those. The rest were handled by other police departments and other agencies, but they were all looked into, which I thought was just amazing that we could do that many investigations. And out of the 2,000, a lot of them were criminal matters that were not terrorism. Some were nothing. You'd go out and it was actually just a miscommunication, or it just appeared to be nothing. But a couple of those cases actually proved to be terrorism cases. In fact, one of the call-ins we got was it later became the case where these individuals, I think they were from Brooklyn, wanted to blow up the gas tanks at JFK Airport.
Oh, my
And
God.
the guys on the squad were able to, we saw that it might be a real case. We turned it over to a case squad. They went and they investigated, and they actually convicted those individuals. So that was a great case.
My God.
One of the cases I became more involved with was the what we call the subway bomber,
Mm-hmm.
and his other people. His guy named Zazi, but he and two others had traveled over to Pakistan and actually were trained on how to make a bomb. And they traveled a bit, and through working with other agencies, we learned of the fact that they wanted to blow up a subway car in Manhattan. And so at one point, working with the other agencies, we were able to find that this guy, Zazi, was driving from Denver, which is where he was currently living at the time, he was going to drive to New York with the bomb making materials to blow up the subway car.
Oh my God.
So we had surveillances out and all this, and following him all the way. He made it into Manhattan because of things that happened. He actually learned that we were investigating him, so he threw out all of his bomb making material. But through further investigation, we were actually able to prove the case against him, and so he was convicted. But then he actually gave us a little bit more information, and then we were able to do investigations against his two cohorts. And it took us a few more months, but we were actually able to get the two other people who were part of the conspiracy and arrest them. And they all are now have been convicted, and I think they're all still in jail.
Oh,
They
wow.
received over 20 years, I think almost 30 years for those cases, because it was their intent to blow up a subway car and kill as many people as they could in the New York City subway system.
That is so amazing though. Like for like people that don't understand, like that is like preventing a terroristic attack like that, especially after 9/11, is so amazing. And what I'm curious about too, like aside from those, like when you're working on those cases, can you like talk about it when you get home to like your family, or do you have to separate it?
Yeah, you never talked about the actual facts and circumstances,
Right.
the specifics. Some of the stuff we did was on the news.
Yeah.
So, I come home and she's like, that you guys? And I'm like, yeah, that's us. Oh, okay. How's it going? It's good.
Right.
We're getting them or we're not getting them or, blah, blah, blah. After we make the arrest, unless it was it was classified, top secret or whatever.
Right.
Now she's the daughter of a cop,
Oh.
the sister of a Fed. The husband. Her husband's a Fed.
Yeah.
My wife got it, and to be honest, the kids didn't care. They thought it was cool I was an FBI agent, but they didn't care about the actual cases, at least way back then. Plus, for them, it became almost like a normal thing because, again, we were on terrorism, especially after 9/11, and even the years forward, we were always running and gunning,
Right.
and trying to stop the next terrorist attack before it happened. We had a thing called the Times Square bomber.
Mhm.
We were overseas. I was over in Afghanistan with the FBI for several months.
And you were with the U.S. Special Forces, correct? Like working
Yeah.
alongside with them. I would love
Yeah,
to
just
hear about
like,
that
our friend
too.
Ray.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'd go out because they'd be going after high value targets
Mhm.
who may have connections to the U.S. We don't know,
Right.
and so we'd go out with them when they would go after these high value targets, and if there was any intelligence or evidence that was in the places where they were going, we would collect that evidence, and we would then take that evidence, communicate with headquarters back in Washington, and then start trying to figure out, did these people have connections back to DC? Were they planning another attack? Did they have, sleeper cells? Did they have active people going? Or were they just interested in, in New York, or
Right.
in LA or whoever, the phone call might go. And so a lot of that is what we did. And that's why we'd work with the Green Berets or the SEALs or whoever they were. It was because we would be more of their FBI agents. We would be their collectors. We'd go in and do that collection and then work, and sometimes with Army or Navy intelligence, and try to figure out what the next step was, if there was a step.
That's so amazing. I would love to have you come back on again with some of the cases that I'm working with. It's outside of New York, a lot of the cases, and there's some in New York. And I would love for you just to go through the case, and I would love to hear like your thoughts on it, because these families are struggling, because it's, one of the cases that we just did, her case, and a couple of them are through the FBI, but after a certain amount of time and there's no, movement, it's hard to put resources into a case if there's like no movement for 10, 11 years, probably like around that. So we did a case. Her name is Yvonne. Her son Max went missing in Aruba, probably a year after the Natalie Holloway situation. And we recorded with her a couple weeks ago. And I think an hour before the call, they kind of told her, they were like, hey, listen, like, we have to put a little bit less resources into this case now because it's been 18 years and there's been nothing. So they're like, we can't just keep putting new task force because people are retiring, there's new people coming in, and I would love to have you come on again and just go through these different cases because, like I said, these people would be forever grateful for that too. And with your
Yeah, no,
knowledge,
it's myself and I work with a couple other people
that'd be awesome.
who have done these type of investigations. And one of the cases that we did, I actually worked, and this was more back in the organized crime days. It was a cold case homicide when
Oh,
I got it. So it was in 97, 98, and it had been a cold case at that point where these two boxing coaches from the local, boys club in Queens owned a bar. A mobster had been in there with his, girlfriend, and there was a spilled drink. Literally, it was over a spilled drink.
what?
The mob guy got upset and was told to leave and kind of forced out. He went out. He spoke with other guys from the mob. They're like, you can't let yourself get kicked out of a bar like that. So he went back with two other guys, and they shot and killed
Oh my.
the two owners. And it went cold for a long time. And, I was a young FBI agent. I had been a prosecutor, but, I'm relatively young in the bureau. And I had this case, and I teamed up with this cop. And it was amazing because he does it the NYPD way. I did it the FBI way.
Yeah.
And we worked together. And it took us about another year, but we were able to identify. One of the guys had already been identified and actually had beat the case. But using all the evidence and going back out and interviewing more people and doing et cetera, we were able to identify the two other people. And we found that one of them was still alive. And so he actually was arrested by the NYPD officer, went to trial and actually beat the case in state court. I then left the squad. And this is where the FBI, I think does a great job. I left the squad. I moved on. I actually moved over to terrorism. And a couple of years later, guys from the squad kept looking into it, and they were able actually to bring a federal matter that included this murder, and they were actually able to convict this guy of a cold case homicide. Now, 30 years, I think, after the crime, the double homicide. Yeah, these cold cases, they go cold without a doubt. They're hard to do, but it is good to bring back sometimes new investigators, people who are looking at it with a new eye. Of course, talking to the old guys, what they've done, where they went. But the new investigators can look at it, and maybe go, okay, now we've got new ways of doing evidence, like Ray Tierney did with DNA.
Yep.
Maybe putting all this new evidence into a new algorithm, which they did out there, and they were able to find, through the new algorithm, working with the FBI and the state police and NASA and et cetera, they were able to identify wrecks on the Gilgo case. So they become cold, but that doesn't mean they go away. You just have to look at them again and again. And listen, you may say being lucky. I call it being good.
Yeah.
But if you don't look at it, you're not going to be lucky or good.
Right.
So you got to keep looking at it.
Yeah, I try to explain to people, like, when I get called on by law enforcement and stuff, I tell them that I'm their last option. Like, I could not be more of a last option if they tried. And it's really because they're like, can you pull up anything? Can you put us in a direction? But I just want to say again, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I would love for you to come back. And I would love for you to talk to families like, the Petitos, whoever. I would just love for you. I think your insight would really help just these families that I've been working with, and even law enforcement, like some of the detectives that I've worked with that are not New York based. They're all over the country.
No, I'd be happy to.
That would be amazing. So thank you so much.
You got it.
Richard, thank you so much for coming on my show. It's so amazing to hear law enforcement and especially how they dissect cases and the cases that meant the most to them. Now, guys, we're going to be doing more episodes like this. I'm going to be bringing on more federal agents, some Secret Service, some NYPD, some law enforcement. And I love going through these episodes, talking to real life law enforcement agencies that are currently working or that are retired. But guys, please do not forget that if you have any cases that you want to be spoken about or that your family's affected by, please email connectjonathanmark@gmail.com, or just send a DM to my Instagram at Jonathan Mark Medium. Thank you so much for listening. But before I let you go, you guys have to rate, review, and follow the show. That would mean everything to me. All right, guys. Thanks.